Admiral Vectora stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Celestial Order, their 4 hands clasped behind their back in perfect military position. Everything was proceeding according to the First Contact Protocol Manual, Section 7, Subsection 12. Approach to previously uncontacted species with early spacefaring capabilities. The Admiral's fleet maintained their mathematically perfect formation. 36 ships arranged in the sacred hexagonal pattern, each vessel exactly 247.3 standard units apart. Their gleaming gray hulls reflected the distant starlight identically, as regulated by Imperial Aesthetic Standard 5.1. Preparing First Contact Broadcast, announced First Communications Officers X. Standard greeting package ready in all 27 recognized galactic languages. Vectora permitted themselves a small nod of satisfaction. This would be their 100th first contact, and like all others, it would proceed with perfect, regulated precision. The humans' primitive scanning systems would soon detect. "Sir," Second Scanner Officer Mel's voice cracked with alarm. "Unknown vessel approaching at. That can't be right." "Speak clearly, Officer," Vectora commanded. "The vessel appears to be dancing, sir, while approaching at FTL speeds." Vectora's upper eyes blinked in sequence with their lower ones, a sign of extreme confusion. Impossible. No ship can maintain a spiral pattern at FTL velocities. The structural integrity. "Hello Galactic. A deafening voice boomed through the bridge speakers, accompanied by what appeared to be electric string instruments and percussion. "This is Lieutenant Jessica Thompson of the U.S., definitely not a warship. Hope you don't mind us crashing the party." The vessel that burst into normal space before them defied every principle of Imperial ship design. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals and materials, some sections clearly salvaged from other vessels. Brilliant LED strips traced patterns along its length, pulsing in time with what Vectora's cultural database identified as Sweet Home Alabama. "By the sacred regulations," whispered First Officer Quell, "are those flame decals?" Indeed, the ship's bow sported elaborate artwork depicting stellar flames, accompanied by text in several Earth languages reading, "If you can read this, you're about to get past." "Imperial vessel," Lieutenant Thompson's voice carried a hint of barely contained laughter. "Your formation is looking a bit stiff there. Mind if we spice things up a bit?" Before Vectora could respond, the human ship performed what could only be described as a perfect barrel roll between 2 Imperial cruisers, missing them by mere meters. The maneuver should have torn the ship apart. Instead, they could hear human crew members shouting, "Yeehaw!" "Scan that vessel immediately," Vectora ordered, their professional calm starting to crack. "I want to know everything." "Sir," the scanner officer's voice trembled, "I'm detecting a coffee maker integrated into their main reactor, something called a magic 8-ball in their navigation system, and, sir, they appear to have mounted actual spinning rims on their engine nacelles." The human ship came about, now displaying a series of what appeared to be bumper stickers along its port side. "My other ride is a Death Star. Horn broken. Watch for hand gestures." And 0 to FTL in 3.5 seconds were among the more comprehensible ones. "This is impossible," Vectora muttered. "This violates at least 15 sections of the Imperial Ship Design Codex. Their power systems alone." "Oh, you mean our reactor?" Thompson chimed in cheerfully, apparently having heard them. "That's just old Bessie. She runs on coffee and spite, mostly. We've got a great engineer. You should see what she did with the quantum manifolds using just duct tape and WD-40. The bridge crew watched in horror as another human vessel emerged from FTL, this one appearing to be a converted mining ship with U.S. Hold My Beer emblazoned on its hull in what appeared to be neon paint. It was performing a maneuver that the Imperial tactical computer simply displayed as \_2_/. "Captain Rodriguez," Thompson called out. "You made it. Did you bring the space barbecue?" "You know it. A new voice joined the channel. "Hey, are these the folks with the fancy gray ships? We brought enough for everybody. Though they might want to park a bit further apart. Can't do proper donuts in space with that grid formation." Admiral Vectora, veteran of 100 first contacts, survivor of the Rigel confrontation, and holder of the Imperial Medal of Perfect Order, did something they had never done before in their distinguished career. They facepalmed. With all four hands. The day protocol died had officially begun. The Imperial diplomatic chamber aboard the Celestial Order had never witnessed such chaos. The pristine white walls and mathematically arranged seating were now cluttered with what Commander Mike Mad Dog Anderson called reading materials for inspiration. Imperial engineers stared in horror at magazines with titles like Hot Rod Starships Monthly, Custom Craft Quarterly, and Pimp My Starship Digest. "Now this baby," Anderson said, flipping to a centerfold of a modified battlecruiser, "is what we call the U.S. Monster Truck. She's got a 20-meter lift kit on those anti-grav suspenders. Watch this." He pressed a button on the holographic display, and the massive warship began bouncing on its suspension system while blasting something called Sweet Home Alabama. Chief Imperial Engineer Zextel collapsed into their chair, all four eyes twitching. But the regulations clearly state that military vessels must maintain a ground clearance of exactly. Ground clearance. Billy Ray Jackson interrupted, swaggering into the chamber in what he called his fancy meeting boots with actual metallic spurs. "Partner, where we're going, we don't need ground clearance." The captain of the Space Cowboy pulled out his own datapad, displaying his merchant vessel's recent modifications. "Check out these chrome-plated quantum manifolds. They don't make her go any faster, but hot Dan, if she ain't prettier than a sunset over Texas." Admiral Vectora watched in mounting despair as their perfectly orchestrated diplomatic meeting devolved into what the humans called a show-and-tell session. The Imperial Diplomatic Corps sat frozen in horror as Jackson approached the Admiral's personal chair. "Say, Admiral," Jackson drawled, "I couldn't help but notice your flagship's looking a mite plain. Now I've got this buddy who specializes in custom horn installations. How'd you like it if your ship played the Imperial March every time you dropped out of FTL? The Imperial Vessel Design Code, Section 47.2, clearly states," Vectora began. "Now hold my beer and watch this," Commander Anderson interrupted, pulling up another hologram. "This here's the U.S. Yeehaw fresh out of the Jefferson space dock. We installed a sound system that can blast Cotton Eye Joe across 3 star systems. The bass is so powerful it actually disrupts enemy targeting systems." The Imperial Chief of Naval Design let out a small whimper as Anderson flipped through more images. Each one seemed to violate more regulations than the last. There was a destroyer painted in what they called hot rod flames, a cruiser with spinning rims on its weapon ports, and something that appeared to be a converted school bus with FTL drives strapped to it. Is that a disco ball on that battleship's bridge?" Someone whispered in horror. "You bet your sweet bippy it is," Jackson confirmed proudly. "That's the USS Saturday Night Fever. She's got a dance floor in the main combat information center. Helps crew morale during those long patrol missions." The breaking point came when Lieutenant Jessica Thompson burst into the chamber, wearing what appeared to be a leather jacket over her uniform and carrying something called a big gulp. "Y'all won't believe what we just did to the U.S. Monster Truck," she announced excitedly. "We installed hydraulics on the main gun batteries. They can now bounce to the beat of any song in the ship's database. Watch." The hologram she projected showed the massive warship's weapon systems performing what appeared to be a synchronized dance routine to "Wake Me Up Before You Go." Admiral Vectora watched as their chief engineer finally lost consciousness, falling face-first into a copy of Custom Warp Core Weekly. The magazine's cover featured a hot pink fusion reactor with the headline 10 hot tips to make your core pop. Number 7 will shock your safety inspector. "Now about that custom horn package," Jackson continued, undeterred by the unconscious engineer. "We're running a special this week. Buy one ship horn. Get a set of fuzzy dice for your bridge viewport absolutely free. And if you act now, we'll throw in a bumper sticker that says, "My other ship is a Death Star," in classic Imperial script. As Vectora watched their carefully planned diplomatic mission dissolve into what appeared to be an impromptu custom ship convention, they couldn't help but notice several junior Imperial officers taking notes and whispering excitedly among themselves. The Empire would never be the same after this day. And somewhere in the distance, they could have sworn they heard "Sweet Home Alabama" playing again. The Imperial Ship Classification Department occupied a perfect cube of space station real estate, where meticulous bureaucrats had categorized every vessel in known space for over 3,000 years. Today, that pristine order lay in shambles as Captain Emily Chaos Martins presented her ship for official registration. So let me get this straight. Senior Classifier Vexner massaged their temples with two of their four hands, while the other pair clutched a rapidly emptying bottle of antacids. Your vessel began its life as a mining ship, Martins beamed. The sweet Georgia Brown started out busting asteroids. Then we added the restaurant section because, honestly, miners get hungry. The karaoke bar was just good business sense. And the bowling alley? Vexner's eye twitched. Oh, that came after we converted her to a battleship. Gotta have something to do between firefights, you know. She pulled up a hologram of her ship, which seemed to defy every known law of ship architecture. The pizza oven doubles as emergency propulsion if you get the temperature just right. Junior Classifier Zintol raised a trembling appendage. But how do you classify a vessel that's simultaneously a mining platform, restaurant, entertainment complex, and warship? Don't forget the petting zoo on Deck 7. Martinez added helpfully. Those space goats are excellent at keeping the grass trimmed in the ship's park. The ship's park. Vexner's voice cracked. Well, we had all this extra space after installing the water slide, and studies show that green spaces improve crew morale. The department's massive classification computer chose that moment to display an error message in ancient Imperial script that roughly translated to, "I quit." Before the bureaucrats could recover, Lieutenant Danny Drift King Williams sauntered in, boots clicking on the polished floor. "Y'all mind if I register the U.S. hold my beer while I'm here?" What exactly is your vessel's primary function?" Vexner asked, dreading the answer. "Vibing," Williams replied with a straight face. "Vibing is not a recognized ship classification," Zintol protested, frantically flipping through the Imperial Ship Registry Codex. "Well, she also does some light peacekeeping, temporal physics research, and we've got a pretty successful food truck business running out of Hangar 3. Williams projected his own ship's schematics, which appeared to be drawn on digital napkins. "The quantum drive runs on good times and theoretical physics we made up while watching sci-fi movies." The classification computer displayed another message. "Error 404. Logic not found," before starting to smoke slightly. But how does it work?" A senior engineer who had been quietly having an existential crisis in the corner finally spoke up. "We painted it red," Williams shrugged. "Everyone knows red ones go faster." The computer began playing what sounded suspiciously like a funeral dirge. The situation deteriorated further when Commander Jessica Thompson calmed in from the U.S. Definitely not a warship. "Hey y'all, just wanted to update our registration. We've added a mechanical bull rodeo arena in the forward section. Where did you find the space for that?" Vexner asked weakly. "Oh, we just followed the instructions in Cowboys Monthly, Space Edition, for proper space folding techniques. Had some extra room after installing the line dancing hall." The classification computer displayed its final message. "Gone fishing. Don't wait up," before shutting down completely. "Look," Vexner finally said, pushing aside the mountain of regulation manuals, "what if we just created a new classification category?" "Ooh, what are you gonna call it?" Martins asked, bouncing excitedly in her gravity boots that played a different tune with each step. "Probably a spaceship and leave it at that," Vexner suggested desperately. Works for me. Williams agreed. Now, anyone want to see what happens when we plug a karaoke machine into the main weapons system? Turns out you can modulate plasma torpedoes to dance to Sweet Caroline. As the human captains enthusiastically demonstrated their ship's various features, Vexner noticed several junior classifiers taking notes with unusual interest. One was even asking about something called hydraulic suspension for their personal shuttle. The infection of human chaos had begun to spread, and somewhere in the distance, a space goat bleated in perfect harmony with Sweet Home Alabama. The classification department would never be the same, and oddly enough, nobody seemed to mind anymore. The Imperial Combat Simulation Chamber was designed to test the galaxy's finest battle strategies. Its quantum computers could predict a ship's movement down to the millimeter, processing thousands of years of established combat doctrine. Today, those computers were having what could only be described as a nervous breakdown. "What do you mean, undefined maneuver?" Admiral Vectora demanded, staring at the holographic display where Lieutenant Danny Drift King Williams' ship was doing something that made the physics engine cry. "Sir, the combat computers," I responded, its voice glitching. "The U.S. Y'all watch this is currently executing a maneuver that our database identifies as Tokyo Drift. We have no tactical analysis for ships sliding sideways through an asteroid field while playing Deja Vu at maximum volume." Williams' voice crackled over the comm, sounding entirely too pleased with himself. "Hey y'all, watch this next part. We call it the Space Cowboy Shuffle." The Imperial tactical officers watched in horror as the human vessel spun on its central axis, somehow using the rotation to slingshot around a massive asteroid. The ship's external speakers blasted what their cultural database identified as Old Town Road. "That's impossible," Chief Tactical Officer Zexner shouted. "You cannot use drift dynamics in zero gravity. The physics don't." Yeehaw! The battle cry cut through the protests as Captain Ashley Flash Johnson's vessel, the U.S. Moonshine Runner, burst into the simulation space. Her ship was performing what appeared to be a choreographed dance routine with its weapon systems. "Sorry we're late to the party," Johnson drawled. "Had to finish installing the new bass boosters. Anyone up for some Cotton Eye Joe?" The Imperial combat computers displayed an error message that simply read, "Please make it stop." "Now pay attention," Williams instructed as his ship began what he called a 360 no-scope barrel roll. "This here's a little maneuver I learned from playing something called Star Fox 64. Vectora watched in mounting despair as the human ships began performing what appeared to be a synchronized space ballet. The U.S. Y'all watch this, and the Moonshine Runner weaved through the asteroid field in perfect harmony, their movements synchronized to something called country roads. "Sir," a junior tactical officer reported, their voice quavering, "I'm detecting multiple human vessels approaching. They appear to be in formation." Finally, Vectora sighed. "Some proper military." The newcomers burst into view, led by the U.S. definitely not a warship, arranged in what the humans called a conga line. Each ship was connected to the next by what appeared to be tractor beams modified to pulse in time with La Macarena. "Who's ready for some line dancing?" Lieutenant Thompson's cheerful voice boomed across all frequencies. "First round of reactor juice is on me." The Imperial combat computers, faced with calculating the tactical implications of a conga line of warships, displayed their final message. "Gone to get a drink. Don't wait up." "Come on, Admiral," Williams called out. "Your ships may be grayer than my grandma's cat, but they've got potential. Just need a little rhythm." To Vectora's horror, several Imperial ships began breaking formation, their junior officers clearly infected by the humans' enthusiasm. One destroyer attempted what it probably thought was a dance move, ending up in what could generously be called a spiral. "That's the spirit," Johnson encouraged. "Though y'all might want to ease up on the thrusters. It's more of a hip movement thing." The simulation chamber's main screen now displayed multiple human vessels performing maneuvers with names like the Bootstrap Bill, the ye to the haw, and the electric slide into DMs. And for our grand final, Williams announced, we present the Space Jamboree. What followed could only be described as chaos set to music, as human ships performed a series of increasingly impossible maneuvers, while a mix of country music and pop hits echoed through space. Somewhere in the midst of it all, Vectora noticed their own flagship's navigation officer tapping their foot to the rhythm. The Empire's combat doctrine would need significant revision after this day. Perhaps they could start with a chapter on the tactical advantages of a good bassline. The Imperial Engineering Academy's main auditorium had never seen anything quite like Chief Engineer Tommy, the tool man, Wilson's presentation. The normally austere hall was now decked out with neon lights, holographic flames, and what appeared to be a rotating platform displaying a modified cargo hauler that definitely didn't meet Imperial specifications. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all configurations, Wilson announced, his voice booming through speakers that had been unnecessarily upgraded with subwoofers. Welcome to the first ever Pimp My Starship Symposium. In the front row, several Imperial engineers clutched their regulation datapads, their eyes wide with a mixture of horror and fascination. The cargo hauler on display spun slowly, its hull gleaming with what Wilson called candy paint that shifted colors as it moved. Now y'all might be wondering about that sweet purple glow coming from the engine ports. Wilson grinned, pointing to the pulsing lights. That's what we call nose. Does it do anything in space? Technically, no. Does it look awesome? You bet your hyperdrive it does. A tentative appendage raised from the audience. But what about the Imperial Engineering Code, Section 7.3, regarding aesthetic modifications? My friend, Wilson's grin widened as he pressed a button on his remote. The cargo hauler's hull plates suddenly began moving in a wave pattern, accompanied by bass-heavy music. We're about to make that code as outdated as a steam-powered warp drive. The audience gasped as the ship's cargo bay doors opened, revealing an interior that looked more like a nightclub than a storage area. This baby's got a full entertainment system, mood lighting, and check this out. He pressed another button, and the ship's external lights began pulsing in time with "Get Low." Is that legal? Someone whispered. I'll do you one better, Wilson replied, signaling to his assistant. Bring in the Imperial Special. The auditorium's massive doors slid open to reveal what had once been a standard Imperial destroyer. The previously regulation gray vessel now sported chrome plating, pinstripes, and a hydraulic suspension system that allowed it to bounce between star systems. As Wilson put it, "This beauty right here." Wilson patted the destroyer's hull affectionately. "We gave her the full treatment. Custom paint job, LED underglow, sound system that'll make your antennae tingle, and watch this." He activated a control panel, and the destroyer's weapon systems began performing what he called a synchronized dance routine to Lowrider. In the back of the auditorium, several junior engineers were frantically taking notes. One was already sketching designs for flame decals on their personal shuttle. The infection of human customization culture had begun. But the real magic, Wilson continued, opening a panel to reveal the engine room, is what we did with the power core. Y'all ever wonder why Imperial ships all run at exactly the same efficiency? That's 'cause you're following the manual like it's gospel. Sometimes you gotta improvise. He pointed to a series of modifications that made several senior engineers faint on the spot. A little tweak here, a custom bash there, and boom. You've got yourself a hot rod that'll make the Kessel Run look like a Sunday drive. Is that a fuzzy dice hanging in the bridge viewport? Someone asked weakly. You bet your sweet bippy it is. Wilson beamed. Adds at least 5 parsecs to your top speed. Don't ask me how. That's just science, baby. The presentation reached its climax when Wilson revealed his piece to Resistance, a holographic catalog of custom modifications, complete with prices in both Imperial credits and what he called good ol' American dollars. And for our grand final, Wilson announced, we're offering a special deal. First 50 customers get a free set of spinner rims for their nacelles and a bumper sticker that says, "My other ship is a Battlestar." As the audience broke into chaotic discussion, with many junior engineers already pulling out credit chips, a message appeared on the Academy's main screen. The Imperial Engineering Code has encountered an unexpected error and needs to restart. Would you like to install updates from custom_culture.x? The revolution had begun, and it had chrome plating. Lieutenant Amanda Crafty Parker sat in her quarters aboard the U.S., definitely not a warship, admiring the chaos she had unleashed across the Imperial data networks. Her latest creation, Spaceship Core, for all your DIY vessel needs, had gone viral faster than a malfunctioning warp core. "Check out my latest post," she typed, uploading images of her captain's quarters. 10 easy ways to transform your command center into a cozy combat station. #ship goals, #livelocklove, #pew pew. The response was immediate. Thousands of Imperial officers, particularly the younger generation, began flooding the network with their own modification ideas and questions. "How did you install that hanging garden in your torpedo bay?" asked Imperial Ensign Rebel _2749. "My commanding officer keeps saying plants and antimatter torpedoes don't mix, but your aesthetic is literally giving me life." Parker grinned as she typed her response. "Girl, you just need some fairy lights and proper drainage. Check out my latest tutorial. From weapons to Wonderland. A step-by-step guide to sustainable ship gardens, #green space, #organic warfare." The revolution had taken an unexpected turn when Admiral Vectora's daughter, Lieutenant Vecmora, was caught running what she called a boutique ship modification business out of her quarters. Instead of standard-issue replacement parts, she had been selling artisanal hull plating and free-range plasma coils to other young officers. "These aren't just regular plasma coils," Vecmora insisted during her disciplinary hearing, which was being live-streamed across the network. "They're handcrafted, locally sourced, and each one comes with its own inspirational quote. Plus, they're wrapped in recycled copper wire that I personally distressed to achieve that vintage look." The hearing was interrupted by notifications of her latest drop, Cottage Core Cargo Bays. "Because your storage space deserves to feel like home." Parker watched the chaos unfold on her holoscreen while adding finishing touches to her latest project, a cross-stitch pattern that read "Bless this mess" in ancient Imperial script, perfectly framed by decorative photon torpedoes. "Y'all won't believe what I just did to the mess hall." Lieutenant Jessica Thompson's message popped up in the feed. "Found these amazing vintage cafeteria trays from the first Galactic era. A little metallic paint, some epoxy resin, and boom. Wall art that tells a story. #upcycled space, #vintage vibes." The real scandal broke when someone leaked photos of Admiral Vectora's flagship sporting a massive live, laugh, love decal in ancient Galactic script across its hull. The photos went viral faster than a quantum entanglement, spawning thousands of memes and a new trend of philosophical quotes on warships. "It's not just about aesthetics," Parker explained in her viral holovlog. "It's about making your space feel like home, even if that space happens to be a heavily armed military vessel capable of reducing planets to cosmic dust." Today, we're turning this standard-issue ready room into a shabby chic command center using only spare parts and a dream. The Imperial Design Bureau tried to crack down on the trend, but it was too late. The aesthetic rebellion had spread to every corner of the fleet. Young officers were trading ship inspo photos like contraband, and a black market for decorative void-safe fairy lights had emerged. "Check out this DIY tutorial," posted a young Imperial cadet. "How to turn your regulation bunk into a cozy reading nook with hidden weapon storage. #cozy warfare, #ready for battle." The final straw came when the Imperial Academy's graduating class submitted their final projects. Instead of the traditional gray-on-darker gray color scheme, each ship sported what the students called personality. One vessel had been decorated to look like a floating space cottage, complete with holographic ivy and what appeared to be shutters on the viewports. Parker sat back, scrolling through the chaos she had created. Her next post was already drafted. 5 minutes to fabulous. Quick ship makeovers for the busy space professional hashtag. Spaceship Core hashtag Imperial Chick. As she hit post, another notification popped up. Admiral Vectora has started following your channel. The Empire would never be the same, and it would be absolutely fabulous. The Imperial Strategic Command Center resembled a stress ball that had been squeezed too many times. Holographic displays flickered with error messages as Captain Jack Murphy's Law Reynolds demonstrated what he called freestyle space combat to an increasingly distressed audience. "Now watch this maneuver," Reynolds announced cheerfully as his ship, the U.S. Hold My Sweet Tea, performed what appeared to be a barrel roll combined with a square dance. "I call this one the Tennessee Twister. Learned it from my granddaddy's tractor techniques." Senior Strategic Advisor Vexilon clutched their datapad like a security blanket. "Our predictive algorithms cannot process this madness. How do we calculate the strategic implications of a ship that treats space combat like a rodeo?" "That's the neat part," Reynolds drawled, his ship now spinning in ways that made the physics engine whimper. "You don't. Sometimes you just gotta yeehaw and let Jesus take the wheel." The massive strategic computer, which had analyzed millions of battles over thousands of years, displayed a simple message. "What in tarnation?" "Sir," a junior analyst reported, their voice cracking, "the human fleet is approaching in what appears to be line dance formation." Sure enough, the fleet of modified human vessels approached the simulation space, led by the U.S. definitely not a warship. Each ship moved in perfect synchronization to what the cultural database identified as Boot Scootin' Boogie. "Let me demonstrate our latest tactical innovation," Reynolds grinned. "Y'all ever hear of the Yeehaw maneuver?" Before anyone could stop him, Reynolds' ship began performing a series of moves that looked suspiciously like the choreography from Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. Somehow, these apparently random movements resulted in his vessel dodging every single targeting solution the Imperial computers could generate. "Our tactical simulations," Vexilon wailed. "They're completely useless against whatever this is." "Oh, that ain't nothing," Lieutenant Jessica Thompson chimed in. "Watch what happens when we synchronize our ships to Cotton Eye Joe." The entire human fleet began moving in patterns that seemed to defy both physics and common sense. Ships performed maneuvers with names like the Double Dutch Disaster, the Square Dance Shuffle, and the Grand Ole Opry Special. The Imperial Strategic Computer, faced with calculating the battle effectiveness of a fleet performing country line dances in space, began playing what sounded suspiciously like the sound of silence. "And for our next demonstration," Reynolds announced, "we'll show y'all how we adapted some moves I learned at my cousin's wedding. We call this one the electric slide into enemy territory." Vexilon watched in horror as their perfectly organized battle plans were systematically destroyed by maneuvers apparently inspired by various forms of earth dancing and activities that humans called holding my beer and watching this. "Sir," another analyst reported, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from the human fleet. It appears they're powering up the Bass Cannon." Thompson confirmed cheerfully. "Turns out you can disrupt enemy shields if you blast Sweet Home Alabama at just the right frequency." The Strategic Command's main display now showed multiple human vessels performing what Reynolds called tactical dance moves. One ship was doing donuts in space, while another performed what appeared to be a perfect recreation of the Macarena using its weapon systems. The algorithms. Vexilon clutched their head. How do we predict an enemy that bases their combat doctrine on dance moves and rodeo tricks? That's the beauty of it, Reynolds explained, his ship now moonwalking through an asteroid field. Even we don't know what we're gonna do next. Makes it real hard to counter something when even the folks doing it are just making it up as they go. As if to prove his point, the U.S. Hold My Sweet Tea executed a perfect backflip while firing its main guns in a pattern that spelled out howdy in laser fire. The Imperial Strategic Command would need to completely rewrite their combat manuals after this. Perhaps they could start with a chapter on the tactical applications of square dancing. The Imperial Shipyard's main ceremony hall had never seen anything quite like this graduation ceremony. Admiral Vectora, now sporting a leather jacket over their ceremonial uniform and mirrored aviator sunglasses on all four eyes, stood at the podium before the first graduating class of the Imperial Custom Culture Academy. "My fellow beings of the Empire," Vector announced, their voice carried by speakers that had been unnecessarily but aesthetically upgraded with neon tubes, "today marks a new era in Imperial history. We gather to celebrate the marriage of Imperial precision with human." "What's the term?" "Swagger," shouted the graduating class in perfect unison. The massive display screens showed the graduating fleet arranged in what would have once been a perfect geometric pattern. Now, each ship sparkled with individual personality. The valedictorian's vessel, formerly a standard Imperial destroyer, now sported a paint job that changed color based on its captain's mood and what they called hydraulic suspension that allowed it to bounce in time with classical Imperial marches. When humans first entered our space, Vectora continued, adjusting their leather jacket's collar, "we thought their ships were an affront to order itself. Now we understand that they were teaching us something valuable: the rule of cool." The ceremony reached its highlight as Vice Admiral Betty Burnout Miller's flagship made its entrance. The massive vessel, once the epitome of Imperial standardization, now featured flame-throwing exhaust ports, a custom hydraulic suspension system, and a paint job that would make a supernova look subtle. "Watch this, y'all." Miller's voice boomed across all frequencies as her ship performed what she called a synchronized space drift through the ceremonial arch. The flame-throwing exhaust ports spelled out "Empire's Got Style" in burning plasma against the backdrop of space. The graduating class responded by having their ships perform a perfectly choreographed routine to a remix that blended traditional Imperial military hymns with something humans called dubstep. "And now," Vector announced, "the moment we've all been waiting for, the first ever Imperial custom ship show." The parade of vessels that followed would have given their past self an aneurysm. Each ship represented a unique fusion of Imperial engineering and human customization culture. There was a cruiser decorated in what they called hot rod flames, a destroyer that had been lowered and given what humans called a sweet stance, and even a battleship that had been modified to resemble something called a 57 Chevy. "Remember," Vector addressed the graduates, "the new Imperial motto: if it looks cool and it works, it's regulation." The ceremony reached its climax with the unveiling of the Empire's new flagship. The massive vessel gleamed with chrome plating, its hull decorated with pinstripes, hand-painted by artisans from Earth's custom car culture. The ship's designation, written in both Imperial script and what humans called hot rod font, read, "The Spirit of Innovation." And for our grand final, Vectora grinned, pressing a button on their custom leather command bracelet. "Let's show the galaxy what the new Empire is all about." The entire graduating fleet, led by Miller's flagship, performed a maneuver that would have been impossible according to old Imperial doctrine. Each ship activated its newly installed hydraulic systems, making the fleet appear to dance among the stars, while their modified engines created a light show that could be seen from 3 systems away. As the ceremony concluded, Vectora watched their empire's future taking shape before them. The old guard had worried that human influence would weaken the empire. Instead, it had evolved into something more vibrant, more adaptable, and significantly more sparkly. "One last thing," Vector announced, removing their aviators for emphasis. "The Imperial shipyards are proud to announce our new customization package deals. Remember our special offer. Every new commission comes with free fuzzy dice for the bridge and a bumper sticker that reads, 'My other ship is a Death Star.'" The Empire would never be the same, and as Vectora watched their newly graduated fleet performing donuts in space, they couldn't be happier about it. After all, Even the most serious space empire needs a little style.